Lisa, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, we're just going to dive into this because I haven't talked about business for a while. I was telling you earlier, I love the idea of women in business. And I think even reframing the word business for some women to make it about soul purpose, because
Mhm.
I meet a lot of women who started maybe on more of a corporate path, or maybe they were just thinking about wealth generation and they started doing it. And
Mhm.
then they realized it wasn't their thing and they took a severe detour and
Mhm.
went a 360 onto a whole other path. So there's something to that middle balance. Like I believe empowering women to create wealth in their own way is really smart.
Mhm.
If she has that desire, even if you're a mother, even if you have other constraints or responsibilities, anyway, I'm just passionate about that. So I'm glad we can have this conversation today because you've definitely taken this whole like ambitious women thing and put it into like a container of capacity is what you call it. What
Yeah.
do you call it? The capacity code.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Let's start with identifying for our listeners sort of what that is and how you came upon it, however you want to
Yeah.
define that.
Yeah. I started my business, well, I think the beginning of it was 2008 and then officially in 2010. So I've been doing this for a long time. And one of the reasons I got into the concept of capacity is just from working. I mean, I think I've worked with over 70,000 people at this point in one way or another.
Wow.
And I started to notice patterns. I started to notice that a lot of the people I was working with, because when I first started, I was more of a health coach. This was over a decade ago. But I noticed after a few sessions, the things that when my clients were talking to me about was not their health. It was not, drinking a green smoothie every morning. It was more about the pressures and the overwhelm and the burnout that they were experiencing in their lives. And they were all very ambitious women that I was working with. And even today, I don't just work with business owners, I have corporate women that I work with, artists, auto body shop owners. I mean, it runs the
Mhm.
gamut. And in particular, the reason capacity is what I do is because I notice that when we're very ambitious and we have big goals and plans for what we want to do with our lives, we tend to go to, all right, well, what's the strategy I need to get there? What's the step by step? What strategic expert can I hire that's going to tell me how to get there with this formula? And we completely forget to ask ourselves, do I have the capacity to match the size of the goal that I'm going after?
Yeah, because it can be demotivating if you're
Hmm.
constantly setting these goals and we'll just say expectations of what maybe the field standards are for their field.
Right.
And like you said, maybe they're not, it's not that they're not capable because we don't want to say that, but because I mentor a lot of women in business and have been for the past probably 10, 15 years and
Hmm.
well, 12 to be exact. And
Hmm.
what I noticed is the exact same thing. They feel it. They have this desire. They have the vision even for it. And they're there. They're motivated. But when they come back into their daily routine, their daily lives, they f- they become quickly demotivated because
Hmm.
they haven't been able to match maybe the emotional side of things. Is
Yeah.
that what you mean kind of by the capacity? Does it have to do with
Um, no,
emotionality?
no, it's actually much bigger than that. I have a whole framework that I have put together in the last, I think it's been out 12 years for me too, um, because its capacity consists of many things. But the way I officially define capacity is your ability to hold, handle, and receive every next level of your growth. And that's how I define capacity.
The ability to have, handle, and
The ability to hold, handle, and receive every next level of your growth.
mm, I love the receive part. It's very
Yeah,
feminine.
yeah.
And so is
Because
hold.
receiving is a big part of it because if we don't have the capacity to receive, let's say I want a soulmate relationship, right? Well, do I have the capacity to receive the level of relationship I want?
Mm,
Because I could reject it. I could see it and push it away because I'm intimidated by it or because I feel like I can't handle. that type of a relationship, or I have a limiting belief around what I can handle. If I have a seven-figure revenue goal, okay, that's great on paper, and I can give you a formula that will like show you quarter by quarter how to get there. But there are all sorts of challenges that come up on the path to get to that seven-figure revenue goal. And do you have the capacity to handle them? And it runs the gamut from emotional, from structural, to boundaries, to
Yeah.
challenges with your visibility. So I've basically found that there are six sort of capacity areas that are challenged when we want to take things to the next level in any area of our lives.
So
And
what
it's
are those
a
six, what are
strategy
those
can
six areas?
help.
Because when I think capacity, my visual is like a threshold.
Hmm.
Or I think there's a book called The Big Leap that talks about, have you heard of that book, The Big Leap? He talks about you hit, oh, forget what he calls it,
Your
but
upper
it's almost
limit.
like you're, yeah, yes, a
Hmm.
stopping point, literally, where you just don't have, that's why I asked you if it was an emotional, because sometimes you just don't have the awareness
Yeah.
of what that is. So what are those six levels, or what do you call them? Six plateaus.
Yeah, the six capacity plateaus. So um, this is derived from working with so many people. These are those six ones that I see the most often. So the first one is your money capacity. And I define money capacity as your ability to earn, save, and invest larger and larger amounts of money every year. So
Mm.
are you doing that? If not, you might have a money capacity issue. Um, then we have visibility capacity, and that's a huge one. I'd say out of the emotional capacity, aside from emotional capacity, visibility is the biggest one. And visibility is the ability to allow all of you to be fully seen in what
Ah,
you do.
that's so scary.
Very scary,
You
especially for
know,
women.
it's interesting that you're making that the big one, because I have felt for some time that as it relates to women and their feminine needs, we have this great ability to be seen and heard, especially seen, but it's also our greatest need and our greatest fear.
Yes.
It's like this paradox.
Absolutely. A lot of times when I work with people who have visibility capacity deficits, is what I call, and that's the thing that's holding them back. It's that we think that if we allow all of our sides and gifts to be seen, that we'll lose clients, or people will judge us, or loved ones will think we're weird,
Yeah.
or we'll get ostracized from our industry. Um, and even it runs the gamut into purposely sabotaging or holding back from opportunities to be more visible, because you're afraid that if you become more visible, that you're kind of going to get swept into like a maelstrom of activity that you can't control.
It's like
Like,
I'm already at my max. And so if I'm really seen, and it's going to add to my
right, it's just
burden.
going to be more on my plate that I won't be able to handle, right? And so I push the opportunities away instead of, well, let me expand my capacity so that I can handle more. And it doesn't mean I'm going to pile my plate with more stuff. It's about what can I hold, handle, and receive. And sometimes that means setting boundaries and releasing some other things that are not important
Sure.
anymore. That's
But I think
visibility.
it is a deep soul need to be
Hmm.
seen for who we are,
Yeah.
warts
And
and
it
all,
needs fear.
and
And it
super
needs fear.
scary.
But
Uh,
what I have found with that is it is fearful, and that's why I work with people in this area of capacity. It's a process. It's not just like, oh, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. We have to expand our capacity to allow more and more of ourselves to be seen. But a lot of times when my clients are able to do that, they start having incredible results. The ones who are most afraid to reveal that they have this whole intuitive side to themselves, and not just business coaching, but maybe weaving in their intuition and their shamanic gifts into their business coaching.
sure.
Suddenly, like, enrollments in their programs triple, because the thing about you that you are often most afraid to show is the most magnetic and most unique thing
Mm,
about you.
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay,
I've seen
so
that.
money and visibility, those are biggies.
Yep.
I've had to work through those. What's the third one?
The third one is purpose,
Mm.
purpose capacity. And I define that as your inside matching your outside.
Mm.
So you're not building a business or a career that um, you're doing it because it's what you're supposed to do, or it's the thing that makes money, versus is it actually something that's aligned with your purpose? So I often see women get to this point where they're like, I built this business and I hate it and it's draining and I don't know why, or I've spent all these years in this career that's not fulfilling to me. It's not actually aligned with my purpose. So that's a purpose capacity issue. Um,
Mm.
and then embodiment capacity is to me this is the one that nobody,
Literally one of my favorite words,
yeah, yeah, mine
embodiment.
too. Embodiment capacity is a combination of your emotional, spiritual, and your mental capacity. And this is the one that nobody thinks they need and is the one they most need. And that's just the ability to handle the emotional, internal challenges that come up as we're expanding into our next level. So, the kinds of challenges that you're going to have to navigate. Again, I'm just going to use an example. This example doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but I have clients often that want to build like a 7 or an 8-figure business. And I'm like, that's great. But the kinds of emotional challenges that come up for you when you are a 7-figure business versus a 6-figure business are totally different. The kind
We
of,
call it new level, new devil.
yeah, exactly. Like
Your
the,
inner
the
demons,
team
your inner
challenges.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah. And this, like the more you expand, sometimes the deeper the old stuff comes up to be challenged. And you need support in that area because otherwise, I've had clients who came to me because they've built these very successful businesses and their marriages fell apart. They became a nervous wreck, anxiety attacks all the time, had to shut the whole business
Yeah,
down.
I have met many in that burnout. Yeah,
Right.
it's I call this phase like shadow work.
Yes.
It's climbing into the underworld, like the descent journey.
Hmm.
Some people can categorize that eventually as their dark night of the soul, but that's a
Yeah.
needful thing when you're going into your purpose. It
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
initiatory process, I would say.
Absolutely. And it's necessary every time you expand. I call it going into the cave. So every time you expand, you've got to go into the cave and excavate some
Oh, I
more
don't
fossils.
like that, but it's so true. It is just so true. But
Yeah.
when you come out of the cave, you're wearing a different set of lenses in the way that you look at the world and yourself every time.
And you have more capacity. You have
More
more
capacity.
capacity. The things that used to phase me emotionally 5 years ago in my business are not even a blip on my radar today because I have more embodiment capacity than I did 5 years ago. So, a lot of times those challenging experiences, if we can meet them head on with capacity, actually grow our capacity so that we can handle the
Sure.
challenges at that level we're trying to go to.
Okay, so money, visibility, purpose, embodiment. What's number 5?
Structural capacity.
Oh,
That's the foundations and systems and teams that hold you up to go to your next level.
mm,
And when I say teams, I don't just mean you have a business and you have a team you manage. I mean, because not everybody has that. I mean your life team too. So, for example, a tiny little way I see this show up is um, people are like, oh, I feel bad hiring someone to help me clean the house. I can do it myself. And I'm like, so you have this goal that you want to build this very successful business, but you're okay with spending your entire day off cleaning your house. Like, how is that fueling you? How is that helping you build the capacity to be able to do more in this
yeah.
more successful business if you're still doing the same amount of
Yeah.
stuff at
And
home?
sometimes you have to work through the issues you have around getting that support that you
Right.
don't have to do it all. It's okay to I
Exactly.
have a nanny. I
Yeah.
am fine with that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't
I,
have been 15 years ago just because of
right.
the mindset I
And
had.
I would say that's a structural capacity deficit.
Mhm. It
Um,
definitely was.
yeah.
And I do think that there's this cultural, sociocultural, if you will, ideology that gets perpetuated that women, if they're not doing it all, let's just say at home, and they're coming and they're like hiring outside support or something, that there's something lacking. Like it's just this, it's another weird paradox that gets perpetuated.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, They would almost prefer you to burn out and do it all yourself than outsource and be happy and fulfilled.
Right.
Yeah, which only hurts those around you in your home when you're burned out. It's
Yeah. You don't have the capacity to give your best to anybody at that point because you're stretched so thin. And
yeah,
then you wonder like why life feels so overwhelming and why there's so much on your plate. It's because you're doing so much emotional labor because you don't have the proper support and the proper structures to
right.
lift you up to where you want to be. So it could
Mhm.
even be as simple as like telling your kids they're doing their own laundry from now on, or um, telling your husband or partner to stop making you do emotional labor that you don't have time to do.
Emotional
You know?
labor, I like that.
I don't have time to go to the
So
pantry
it's
and
really
help you
about
find
creating.
the thing that's right there in the front that you can see.
Yeah, it's really, it feels like it's just like about creating boundaries and just being really firm in and that's part of structure, right? Is
Yeah,
creating
so
contained environment.
it's more about being clear around whatever your goal is. So again, I'll just use the business example, but this applies to anything. If my goal is to build a seven-figure business, what teams do I need in place in my life and in my work so that I can actually be the person who has a seven-figure business? Because the person who has a seven-figure business, her structures are very different than the structures of a person that I am right now.
Yeah,
So it's more about building the structures from now that are going to support the goal that you have.
got it.
Boundary capacity is a whole other one.
Yeah. Okay,
That's the
got it.
sixth one.
Okay, what comes after structural?
Boundary capacity.
Oh, hey, it was its own thing.
It is its own thing. Boundary capacity I have an interesting definition of boundaries. A lot of people view boundaries as walls. I don't view boundaries as walls. I view boundaries as specific requests that we make to the universe about what we are and are not available for.
Mm,
And the other thing that people miss about boundaries is that we tend to think that boundaries are about saying no or putting up walls with other people. And we completely forget to add into the discussion setting boundaries with ourselves. So sometimes we're really good at setting boundaries with other people and saying, no, I can't do that, or no, I can't do this last minute for you. But I sure will wake up at 4 a.m. and allow myself to go down a rabbit hole of anxious thinking instead of stopping myself and going, I am not going to do this to myself today, or I am not going to eat this thing that's going to make me totally unproductive and feel horrible for 3 days, or I am not going to allow myself to berate myself today for not getting everything done perfectly. So, self boundaries are huge.
mm,
And the big mistake I see people making here is they get drained, they get burned out because they're trying to go to their next level goal with the boundaries of their current self.
mm.
Your future self has very different boundaries than your current self. And so the way you start building your capacity within the area of boundaries is you start thinking, what kind of boundaries would my future self have? Because those are the boundaries I need to start putting in practice right now.
That's powerful. I really like that. And that it reminds me of just like holding vision and seeing and feeling and creating the emotional connection and the spiritual connection to what it is you want to create, like making it real. And that takes that takes an internal clearing because you won't have the energy reserves like you're saying. You will be at capacity. You won't have what it the fuel needed, if you will, or the space inside of you to
Yes.
create that future self. And it only keeps you in the cycle of I can't do this. It's I don't have what it takes. And that internal dialogue gets really, really rough.
Yeah. That I don't have what if I don't have what it takes? What if I can handle it? That I would say if you say that to yourself, it's the top indicator that you've got a capacity issue going on because you have unlimited growth potential. And that means you have unlimited capacity if you choose to grow it. And so there's no way you're going to get something you can't handle.
Yeah.
If you can't handle it, it's because there's a capacity deficit going on.
Yeah. All right. What is so that's it. That
That's
was
it.
six. That's six. That's a great. So if you could just kind of encapsulate in a nice, pretty package, if possible, how do you increase your capacity? What are those ways that are the most powerful to just really like? Let's say you're committed to that, because I know you have to
Yeah,
choose it first, like you said.
yeah,
So you're just like, okay, I really want to create this thing in my life, whether it's more money or a better relationship or what have you. Uh, how do I up my game? How do I increase that capacity internally?
yeah, yeah. I think, sorry,
Gotta love dogs.
I know, just right at the worst moment. Um, that's a pretty big question. And so when somebody wants to grow their capacity, it's not like here's your step by step, step 1 through 5, because one of the things that you read before we talked about is that we each have our own unique capacity code. So the configuration of those 6 is going to look totally different for you than it looks for me. So you might need more visibility capacity work, and I may need more embodiment capacity work. And so the way that those capacities come together for you and me are different, which means that we need different approaches and we need to work on this capacity first, because the other thing about these capacities is they're deeply interwoven. So a lot of times if I have, let's say, a money capacity issue, when I start working on expanding my capacity to earn, save, and invest more, all of a sudden I might find that my visibility capacity opens up, or vice versa. When I start working on being more comfortable being visible, suddenly I start making more money. So they're very interwoven, and we need to know what our combination is in order to start unlocking more capacity.
Hmm.
So that's why I love going through these 6, because as you were listening, you can start to go, oh, you know what? So when somebody asks me, how do I expand more capacity? I go, the first step is to be very honest with yourself about what your capacity deficits are. So as you were listening to those 6 capacities, you probably went, ouch,
Yeah.
over a couple of them. And you were like, definitely need to work on that. So what I would recommend to you is, I work with people over months, years sometimes, on these capacity deficits. So what I would recommend to you to start with is, okay, if money capacity was my top one that I know I need to work on, then a very simple thing you can do right now is say, what's the top thing I can do? Just one thing I can do
Mhm.
in the next 2 weeks to start to expand my money capacity. Does that mean looking at my bank balance every day? Does it mean saving more? Does it mean risking a little more and investing more in myself? Only you will know what that means for you, barring me getting on a phone call with you and like helping
Right.
you figure it out. But that's a great way to start, is be honest, write down which ones are the ones where you feel you need to work the most, and then just start with one action step that you can take.
Yeah, I love that approach of just like eating the elephant one little bite at a time, but I love that you're starting with honesty. It kind of
Mhm.
reminds me of that step in AA and A where they talk about doing a fearless moral inventory on
Mm,
some scale. If you're trying to break some kind of pattern, if you're getting that little like, ouch, yeah, this one is where I really feel like I'm, let's say, lacking or have this deficit, but I've
mhm.
tried to tackle it before and I wasn't super successful. So people get into this loop of, I literally don't have what it takes. I've
Yeah,
tried before and I failed here.
yeah,
Uh, the honesty of even admitting that you feel like a failure in that arena is a great place to start. What if someone is literally stuck? Like, let's say they got honest and they just poured it out maybe on paper, and then they listed, maybe here's one area that I feel like I could start to address or tackle, but maybe they have this resistance inside or some subconscious programming and they just feel stuck.
yeah. That's a capacity issue. That means that you need help. That means you need to hire help.
Great. I love that
But
you went there.
yeah,
Because we are
no,
not, sometimes we just can't see. We can't. And
no, can't.
there's no shame in that. We need guides. We need people that can see further ahead for us or even identify
Yes.
things we can't see.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say this to my clients, we can see others better than we can see ourselves because try to look at yourself. You can't, you have to go to a mirror and the mirror is reflecting something back to you. So that's not even you looking at yourself. It's a
Yeah.
reflection, right? So we can't see ourselves as well as we can see other people, and we absolutely need help. And if you find that, for example, you decide I'm going to work on my money capacity, but I've tried doing this many times, I've read books, I've gotten the abundance crystals, I've done the
I've done
meditations, and
I broke out all the tools. This is all I
right.
got.
And I always say because those are strategic approaches.
Mm,
That's not actually working on your capacity because there's something much deeper going on. If you have that much of a stuckness in that area, there is something much deeper going on. And in that case, the resistance that you're having is what I call wisdom, because the resistance is wisdom, because your body knows that you don't have the capacity to receive more money right now, if that's the one you're stuck on, right?
and it doesn't want
So
you to burn out, and your body doesn't want you
right.
to
It's
get
saying
stressed.
don't do it because you don't have the capacity for it. So then
Beautiful.
don't go and buy another crystal or read another book because you don't need another how-to. There's a deeper work that you have to do so that you can expand your capacity to feel safe receiving that amount of money. And
Mm,
that doesn't happen by reading a book or holding a citrine in your hand or doing a meditation. That's much deeper work that requires outside support and outside vision to reflect things back to you that you cannot see.
super powerful. Well, I know that there are ways that we are subconsciously sabotaging that, as you say, are not in our immediate awareness. And even if we're doing all the things personally, um, as I've tried to up level in my life, and I've been in business for 20 some years, just on as an entrepreneur, it's made all the difference to invest in mentors and guides to shine that flashlight on things I'm not seeing. It's not easy to take
Mhm,
in that feedback oftentimes or receive that. That's why I love that your definition is the of capacity is the ability to hold, handle, and receive. Because guess what? we we've got to get thick skin. We've got
mhm.
to be able to take in this feedback and receive what we need to get to the next level, and unless we want to be eternally frustrated
Mhm.
with ourselves. So, Lisa, this is great. So, how do people find you? Where can they access you online?
Yeah. So I am Lisa Fabrega, Fabrega, across all platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter,
You're all over.
TikTok.
What?
I'm on everything.
Yeah, and
But Instagram and Facebook are my usual hangouts. And then my website is the same, lisafabrega.com. And when you go on my website and if you sign up for my email list, I actually have a little video that I send you that helps you get clear on why the things you're trying aren't working and why you're having capacity issues.
perfect. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much. This was really great. I took a ton of notes and I'm excited to watch your video and dive even deeper into this.
wonderful. Thank you.